Good morning, early game crew. We only have a few games of college football left. 3 games to be exact. And one of them is tonight. So the season's not completely over. And then, of course, we have all the transfer portal stuff that seemingly never ends. I'm Elijah Campbell. He's Preston Thorne. She's Jen Jensen. And we are talking college football today. A whole lot of it because Ole Miss and Miami square off in Glendale, Arizona tonight. Indiana and Oregon play tomorrow. South Carolina getting transfer portal visitors and some announcements of returners. And to kick off hour number 2, we're going back to one of our favorite municipalities, one of our favorite towns, a place that your GPS should never take you. That's Lawsuit City.
We will going back.
We're going back, baby.
Can't wait. This is the perfect weekend of college football. You have games of actual consequence. We have storylines galore. And then, even better than that, more important stuff might be going on off the field for your team. So it never stops. So like in the NFL, if your team is done, it's over. You just watch the rest of the games. It's really nothing to pay attention to. Maybe your coach gets fired, maybe not.
If you're fortunate enough to have your coach get fired and have your intrigue.
That's true. But in college football, there's actual games happening on the field, but even cooler stuff happening off the field. So it never stops.
No.
Perfect weekend of college football loading.
And do you like messiness?
I like college football, yes.
Okay. Yeah, we're about to get prime college football airing the dirty laundry type messiness when it comes to a specific situation that is happening in the transfer portal. But we're going to get to that when we go to Lawsuit City at 7 o'clock. So, pack up your bags, load up the car, get ready. Because at 7, that's when the GPS is going to take us to Lawsuit City. And we're going to go back for the first time in a while. It's been a bit, but we're going back to
ETA of 7 o'clock. We've right. Loaded the GPS, and we are driving. We will be there at 7, it says.
That's right. And I don't think we're hitting any traffic jams on the way there. Which is always the worst, is when I tell somebody that my ETA is a specific time and then I hit like a 45-minute traffic jam if I'm making a long-distance travel, and then having to constantly update that to whoever I am visiting. May or may not have happened over the Christmas break, and it may or may not have tested what little patience I have left in my body. But tonight, Ole Miss, Miami. Winner gets to go to the national championship game. A lot of storylines here at
so
play.
Many.
Because, for one, with the 4 teams that we have left that are playing college football, none of those head coaches have won a national championship, meaning we will get a first-time winner of a national championship. Indiana as a program's never won it. Oregon as a program has never won it. Ole Miss as a program has never won a real one. And Miami hasn't won one in, I don't know, that was 2001? So that's been, 25 years now?
Yeah.
A quarter of a century? It has been a long time. And shoot, it's significant for Miami to even have beaten Ohio State because it ensures their first top 5 finish in the AP poll since 2003. So they've already made a little bit of a program renaissance. But there's a lot on the line in that game in terms of those coaches. And I think it might change how we think about Pete Golding, and it will certainly, I think it's already kind of changing how people think of Mario Cristobal.
It's going to change every single person's narrative in this. And I was looking at that as I was just trying to write them down as you were saying it. You have an interim coach who was named the head coach. You have a guy who is a alum of the university, brings the university back to glory. He's Cuban-born in Miami. That's a cool story. Kurt Cignetti coming from the depths of FBS all the way up to FCS, and he just wins. Google him. You kind of have Dan Lanning is kind of like the golden child, I guess.
He's the prodigy.
He's the prodigy that is this going to be the time where the prodigy rises up? So each one of these coaching stories is actually really cool. And as a person who sort of complained about college coaches being a little bit boring and milquetoast, none of these dudes are.
No,
each one of them are very interesting in their own way. So if you just would say, okay, why would I want to tune in? Interesting coaches, check. You can look at each one of them and find something very interesting about each one of these coaches.
And just in terms of the football for tonight, Ole Miss and Miami is a fun clash because we are familiar with Ole Miss. We did an entire week of prep leading up into South Carolina's game against them. We watched South Carolina play against Ole Miss, and even though South Carolina made it a one-score game going into the fourth quarter, I think that team was so good and South Carolina was struggling to a point that I don't think anybody, even in a one-score game, thought that was going to be remotely close to going into a positive outcome in our direction. But we're very familiar with Ole Miss, and I'll say this right now. I knew Ole Miss was really good. You can go back and listen to our shows that week. I was amazed with watching Ole Miss's offense. It was a lot of fun. I have not at any point really been impressed with them defensively, but it just hasn't mattered so far, right? I mean, they did give up a lot of yards and 34 points to Georgia. Didn't matter because they had the best quarterback on the field and they had some playmakers, right? Harrison Wallace, who in a game where he was in a college football playoff semifinal against Notre Dame, didn't have his quarterback look his way at hardly any point in that game. It felt like caught 9 passes for 156 yards against Georgia, and including 1 3rd and 7 with the season on the line. They trusted him to go get the ball. Maybe the most underrated player on that team is Harrison Wallace. But defensively, never really blown away with what Ole Miss does. They were significantly better last year. However, this year it just hasn't mattered because their offense has taken that step forward.
Yeah, they were significantly better last year because the front four are now playing in the NFL, getting significant snaps. That's how that works sometimes.
They were that good.
Yeah, that's how that works. And if you're a South Carolina fan, you understand that. You get it. When your 4 dudes are NFL guys, your defense has a chance to be pretty good.
Your team will experience a lot more success.
Yeah, there's a chance that it could be really successful. All right, so if you look at Ole Miss, Miami, the quarterback matchup, again, super intriguing.
Yeah, 2 completely different college football stories and paths to get here.
The trajectories of these 2 players are equally 2026 college football in a nutshell, but from way different ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, like look at Carson Beck, highly celebrated high school recruit, originally commits to Georgia for his first start, right? Is the starting quarterback for the Georgia Bulldogs, wins them an SEC championship, plays in 2 SEC title games, starting quarterback for a team that, honestly, if we had a 12-team playoff back in 2023, that loss to Alabama doesn't end their season. I think they probably win that national championship. I think it's between them and Michigan.
Way back in 2023.
All those many moons ago, a completely different era.
I'm old enough to remember the old era.
Barely.
2023.
Yeah. 2023, a long time ago. What Carson Beck, quarterback that team, did a lot of great things at Georgia, had that injury that kept him out of playing in the playoff last year, but originally the idea is that he's going to go to the NFL draft. The draft process didn't never really play out for him. Probably got some feedback that told him, it would behoove me to go back to school. But Georgia, with Gunnar Stockton, probably felt comfortable with just rolling with him in the future. So he gets in the transfer portal and he goes to Miami. And of course, Carson Beck is kind of been villainized in a lot of college football fandom circles because, yes, he did get that big NIL check. Yes, he did use it to buy a really nice car. Yes, there are videos of him hauling tail on the interstate in said very nice car that anybody listening would have to work at least 100+ years to be able to afford one of those type of vehicles. And
let's just say that car fit a lot better on South Beach than in Athens.
In Athens, Georgia, yes. I don't think it sticks out as much in Miami than it would in Athens, Georgia. But that's Carson Beck. On the other hand, you have Trinidad Chambliss, brutally under-recruited coming out of high school. He spends his entire career at Division II Ferris State, a Division II powerhouse, but at the Division II level nonetheless. He finally gets his shot after winning a Division II championship to transfer up into the SEC, not transferring up into the FCS or the FBS, which is like lower end FBS, like group of 5, like you would normally see maybe a Division II quarterback transfer. But he gets a chance to be on the Ole Miss roster, but he wasn't recruited to start. Remember, Austin Simmons was the projected starter at the beginning of the year because Austin Simmons was the easy shoe-in to replace Jackson Dart. Well, Austin Simmons puts up some solid numbers in the first couple of games, gets hurt against Kentucky. Trinidad Chambliss has to start against Arkansas and lights it up. And he never gave that spot back. And now there's a reason Austin Simmons is going to be playing for Missouri next year because he got Wally pipped in Oxford. And now you have this incredible success story of somebody who started at a very low level, not even in the Division I. It is now has worked his way up to being a starter at the SEC level, starting in a college football playoff semifinal.
And he's also filing a petition for an extra year of eligibility.
One more year. One more year.
So again, college football 2026, it's here.
Peak silly.
It is very much encapsulated in these two guys. So then there's the whole Ole Miss story, right? Pete Golden.
Oh my God.
The whole story about everything, which I will not let anybody forget, that their head coach quit in the middle of the season to take another job. I don't know how many times that should be said every single drive on offense today.
Oh, yes.
Charlie Weiss is calling the plays because Lane Kiffin left.
He bailed.
There's no way that should not be said every single time.
Do I think Ole Miss wins this game? No. Do I want them to? Yes, for this reason, because if Ole Miss gets to the national championship, that means Lane Kiffin will have left that school before the playoff running towards something he didn't think he could get at Ole Miss when it turns out he ran away from the one thing that every coach in this business wants to coach for.
That's a very
national title.
That's interesting because I've been trying to figure out how should I cheer for this? Do I want Ole Miss to win in spite of Lane? And Lane still be able to claim some sign of, because he's going to claim the glory.
Well, and he's
for
still going to get paid money.
And
if they win.
On top of that, get paid money by who?
LSU.
That's crazy. That is what are we doing?
If I were LSU boosters, I'd be like, yeah, I'm cutting off this gravy train already.
Especially if they win the whole thing like that. Honestly, that storyline alone is so funny that I can't help but want it to happen.
You know what? Kudos to the agent for being able to lock that down, because I'd have looked at that and been like, okay, we're laughing really hard to tear this up.
Jimmy Sexton.
Jimmy Sexton wins again.
When does he lose? When does he lose?
He doesn't lose.
Oh, my God. The guy, like Jerry Maguire, Tom Cruise is looking at envy right now at Jimmy Sexton. But
and then there's that story, and then there's Mario Cristobal on the other side. And as I said, he's Cuban. He's Miami native. Went to the U. That is the quintessential guy comes home and wins it. He's from the Saban tree, which everybody is.
Everybody is.
Everybody
coaching in
all
this,
four. Yeah. Everybody's in this. So he's from the Saban tree. He goes away. He comes home, takes his team back to the promised land. And also, since we're in silly season, Michael Irvin will be on display tonight.
Honestly, the silliest we're going to get is Michael Irvin on the sidelines. Now, I hope Ray Lewis joins him again, because that is like the ultimate wild buddy cop duo movie. Like, if I'm casting it, I want Ray Lewis and Michael Irvin. Because the funny thing about Michael Irvin is watching him get on all fours, yelling at the field, almost like barking like a dog. You thought because George is eliminated, there would be no barking in the college football playoff? You would be incorrect.
Yeah.
Because Michael Irvin's still hanging out in this thing.
So we say all that to say, really cool game tonight.
Box office. Oh, it's so great. I can't wait to talk about how this thing goes tomorrow. Oh, man. Ole Miss, Miami in the Fiesta Bowl. Artist formerly known as the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl. And if we want to talk about some of the most unfortunate branding changes in these bowl games, Tostitos no longer doing the Fiesta Bowl is maybe number one behind the Outback Bowl, if anything beats it out. But coming up next, South Carolina Gamecocks are still in portal season. No groundbreaking news yesterday on who is coming in, but we do have news of a visit, and we have news of who is returning. And that pun is intended. I'll tell you why coming up next here in the early game.
Pressing in for our friends at Absolute Glass, the premier glass company of the Midlands, offering auto, home, and business glass repair. So if your glass is damaged, shattered, cracked, or broken, they can handle the job. If it's a cracked windshield, no problem. They'll come out to your location and they'll replace it for you, usually for free, and they work directly with your insurance to take away the headache. That's right. They'll come out to wherever you are, school, home, work, it does not matter. Absolute Glass will come out to you and take care of the job for you. Now, if you're at home, you're looking to increase the value of your home, you can do that with Absolute Glass too. Doesn't matter. Windows, mirrors, shower enclosures. We say it all the time. If you can see through it, Ray and Marianne at Absolute Glass can do it. So check them out online at AbsoluteGlassInc.com. That's online at AbsoluteGlassInc.com.
Wood Trail Drive between Sharps Hill Road and Highway 321, kind of at Excalibur. I can't say that. Excalibur Court. Oh, my goodness. It's almost like a Monday. There's an accident there. Aside from that, traffic seems to be moving fairly well. Could see a couple patches of fog here or there, so keep those low beam headlights on. 70 will be our high today, 74 tomorrow, 78 on Saturday. So soak up the sun soak up the warmth these next few days, because come Sunday, it's going to be a little more clear, but it's going to be cooler. It's going to be 57 with an overnight low of 28. So a little more winter-like conditions coming. Enjoy what you can right now. 46 currently.
There's some news for South Carolina when it comes to the transfer portal. Now, not significant news because I wasn't able to find any news of an actual commitment. But in terms of a visit, Bryant Williams, tackle from the artist formerly known as Louisiana Lafayette. They just go by Louisiana now.
Yeah, and it absolutely confuses me all the time because I get all of those, I get them, Monroe, all those schools confused. So Louisiana is who was Lafayette?
Yes, the Raging Cajuns, if you will. They still kept the Raging Cajuns nickname, but they dropped the Lafayette.
Mm-hmm.
Why? I don't know. Yeah, maybe they just got bored. I don't know. Maybe, they were so good with Billy Napier coaching them, they decided we don't need the long name anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that's what scared Bryant Williams away. I don't know. Or just the fact that maybe he could play offensive tackle at a higher level. Now, let's give you some information on Bryant Williams. I'll go ahead and give you the measurables first. I'll do the exact thing that Preston Thorne does not want to hear first.
Let's do it.
6'7", 335. Biggin. Every kid in the car right now just goes, oh, my God, he's 6'7". Pass block grade of 66.4. Respectable. Run block grade of 69.1 on the precipice of what I would say is good.
Okay.
Has a lot of starts. I think he has played over 1,200 snaps in his career. Played 3 years at Louisiana Lafayette. Or Louisiana, whatever. Did get penalized 7 times last year. But no sacks credited in terms of giving up. Only 8 hurries, 11 pressures. So less than a pressure per game for Bryant Williams. So visited, and I believe he's got one more visit on the docket before making his decision. So that's really the only transfer development I think that I was aware of yesterday. But I think the big news for South Carolina, the notable stuff, is who is coming back, who is returning, and I say that in a metaphorical sense, who's coming back to the team, and also who is returning kicks and punts because Vakari Swain's coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my highlight, was seeing Vakari Swain saying that he's coming back. Because, obviously, when you returned 3 punts last year, and you almost break the single-season record of punt returns in a season in the first 2 games of the year, yeah, a lot of fun. Even the returns he didn't take back to the house last year, really good at helping you flip field position. And that stuff helps win ball games. It's not the deciding factor, clearly, but that helps you win ball games. I think Vakari Swain coming back is a big deal. It was also announced that Nolan Hay coming back on the offensive line, so it's less you have to replace on your offensive line. Shed Surratt as well. And then Mazio Bennett and Donovan Murph also returning.
So Mazio's the one that is most interesting to me because I think, let me speak for myself, I was along the lines of maybe he would be looking to get a fresh start somewhere else because he did regress last year. He didn't have as good a season last year as he did his freshman year, and we were kind of wondering what's up. I don't know any of the inside information or why that was happening or what happened last year, but he did disappear on the depth chart last year. And so I was making an assumption that he would probably be maybe looking to see where he could go. So that is an interesting development to me, and I think that's awesome that he's coming back.
Yeah, and then, of course, Donovan Murph, too. I didn't think Donovan Murph was going to go anywhere. That was not, surprising to me, but excited about him because he reclassified. Last year, he should have been a high school senior. And while he didn't put up, 500 yards of receiving or anything like that, he got a lot of valuable snaps, actual SEC big-time game type snaps. He got some targets. He had some catches. Now that he would have a full offseason, because he was an early enrollee, wasn't able to join the team until fall camp, didn't get to do spring. He'll now get to do the full spring offseason going into a fall camp. Now that he is of traditional college age, I'm really excited because I saw him in high school. And that's one of those guys, when you see some guys play at the high school level and they're clearly better than everybody else, they pass the alien test.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be good at the next level, at least have a really high floor at the next level. That's how I feel about Donovan Murph. So last year, in maybe even a limited role, I was just excited to see him out on the field and getting that experience early, because if there's anybody on that offense where I'm like, that guy can take a really big next step forward, it's that kid.
Yeah, and he gets a whole, as you stated, he gets a whole year of not only practice, but the weight, strength and conditioning program and all that stuff too. So that is a huge development, and that is another positive for the wide receiver room.
And then when it comes to the offensive line too, I know I was one of those. We ran a poll question at 107.5 The Game on Twitter earlier in the week where we asked a question about how we feel about a portal-built offensive line, right? Anyway, we just asked, does the offensive line built through the transfer portal concern you or excite you with the idea of a brand new unit? So with 112 votes, reasonable sample size here, 51.8 said concerned, 48.2% said excited. Because it is a riskier strategy. I thought Nolan Hay, specifically, when he played, was your best option at center. Now, he got hurt at times last year, so he did miss some games, which I think kind of hurts maybe the development. But I thought he was maybe your most reliable option at center, and having him come back maybe alleviates the burden of having to completely build this thing, almost completely build it through the transfer portal. Getting him and Shed Surratt back is nice because I think Shed showed a lot of promise last year. Again, he was a freshman starting on the offensive line in the SEC. I'm going to give a lot of grace period there, but there were some games where he was one of your better blockers, right? Having him and Nolan Hay back, I'm really cool with. Bringing in Darius Gray, who was the number 1 interior offensive lineman in the country coming out of high school, I'm excited with. But again, a freshman that you're going to task with having to start games on the line of scrimmage in the SEC is not an easy feat for anyone.
Especially on the interior.
Especially on the interior where you will be facing some biggins. Then maybe it just alleviates the stress of having to really hit home runs in the transfer portal. If you can get a lot of solid guys and you can get them to gel early, then maybe you can have a serviceable unit that you can roll out in 26.
I guess the two parts is that is still concerning because what you said a lot. So you still need to fill this thing up with folks. And as the portal goes along, people are obviously getting taken out of the portal and going to other places. So your options are limited as time moves forward. The exciting part is you know what you had last year and you don't think it could be worse.
You don't think it can be
You don't
worse.
think.
And I think that would be my one warning, right? Is if you think it can't get worse, that's like the most dangerous sentence anybody could say in any walk of life. Doesn't matter if it's football or the day you're having, like your car breaks down on the way to work before 8 a.m. and you say, how could it possibly get worse? That's the worst thing you should say. That's the last thing that should enter your mind because, buddy, it can.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had those days. It can get worse. Even when it comes to an offensive line, if you say, I don't know how it can get worse. Were you last in every offensive category? You are not. So technically speaking, it can get worse. Unfortunately, there are too many experiences. I know that you listening right now can probably relate to something getting worse that you didn't think could possibly get worse. Building an offensive portal or an offensive line in the portal is one of those new, 2020s way of living in the world of college football. It's just a part of the new reality, right? Well, another part of the new reality is players sometimes aren't choosing to go into the transfer portal, kind of like a swimming pool. Sometimes they get pushed. But what if you push a player into that pool who is a good player and he chooses to go to your hated rival? That change how you feel about them getting pushed into the portal? Well, there's a perfect example of that that's happening in the SEC. And can we relate to that here? I'll tell you what that is coming up next year in the early game.
Wood Trail Drive between Sharps Hill Road and Highway 321. That's an accident that's been brought to our attention. No other slowdowns to speak of. 70 for the high today, 74 tomorrow. This good weather, spring-like conditions, we're going to have that through Saturday. And then come Sunday is when the cool down will return. And we're talking kind of significant because Saturday or Sunday's high will be 57, but the overnight low of 28. So it is going to get a little cooler again. 46 right now on 107.5 The Game.
Now, transfer portal cases, I think we can always talk about on a case-by-case basis. I don't like throwing out blanket generalities when it comes to a lot of transfer portal players because, as Preston Thorne earlier in the week very well put, sometimes you decide to go, sometimes you are pushed. And sometimes even good players are pushed. But what happens when you push a good player into the portal and they decide to go play for your arch rival?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we don't have a ton of instances of that happening, especially for players that are really good, right? But there's an interesting case going on in the Texas-Oklahoma Red River rivalry.
That's a tough. You nailed it.
That's very impressive.
I had to really focus on something and enunciate, right?
That's tough.
Can't ask me to say it 5 times fast. I'm probably going to fail to do that. But
you got it.
The Red River rivalry has a fun new chapter, and by fun I mean juicy.
Yep.
Because Parker Livingstone, a receiver at Texas, a wide receiver who grew up cheering for the Texas Longhorns, loved that program, announced that he was going into the transfer portal.
Arch Manning's roommate.
Yes, and Arch Manning's roommate, which if you watched any Texas game this year,
they
the
were sure to let you know that.
Would let you know. If you didn't hear it the first time, you were sure to hear it the 5th or the 6th.
Maybe because he was catching 5 and 6 passes also.
Yeah,
right?
He was catching a lot of passes.
So he was somebody who played a lot. And was not even a contributor. He was a starter on the team.
Yeah, and he was a big play threat. To give you an example, when they played Arkansas earlier this year, he only caught 2 passes for 104 yards, right, and a touchdown. He had a really good season. He caught 29 passes for 516 yards, accounted for 6 touchdowns. He was a contributor. And if you just watch them play, those are just numbers, right? But if you watch them play, he was a really good, valuable asset to that offense. And obviously, when you live with a starting quarterback, you're probably going to have a really good rapport with starting quarterback. Look no further than back when Texas had Colt McCoy and his roommate Jordan Shipley. Again, one of those things where the broadcast lets you know every time because there's a reason I still remember that almost 20 years later. Really good rapport. That duo helped take them to a national title game. But Texas has essentially pushed him into the portal, and Parker Livingstone said as much in his announcement when he's put on Twitter, like most players do when they go in the transfer portal. They type this long thank you note out, and he said, this wasn't my own choosing. So essentially getting pushed into the transfer portal, and he decides he is going to play for the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, the reason Texas pushed them out is because they're putting all their eggs in the basket of one Cam Coleman, who receiver at Auburn, had about 800 or so receiving yards this past year, was an elite blue chip high school recruit coming out as a wide receiver, and has legit NFL talent. I don't blame anybody for trying to sell their soul to get the services of a Cam Coleman. But pushing Parker Livingstone out, now him going to go play for Oklahoma, throws a little bit of a wrinkle into it. Maybe is there seller's remorse there from a team like Texas? Solely because of where he goes.
Where he ends up. Yeah, I mean, this is why it's really interesting, and that's why I've always said, like, we don't know exactly the conversations that are happening, because even though Parker Livingstone is saying that it wasn't of his own choosing, we don't know what the conversation was. It could have been, hey, Parker, I know you were guaranteed X amount in rev share, but because we are reconstructing our roster, we are only going to be able to offer you X minus this year in rev share. And maybe he's just like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And you could say, he could say they forced me to do it, and they could say, well, we gave him an opportunity. That could have happened. It could also happen they said, hey, Parker, you've been awesome. You're not going to be our number one guy this year because we want this receiver, and this is Cam Coleman. What do you want to do with that information? And he could say, I don't see myself in that spot. I'm leaving. Or it could have been like they used to do in the old days, and they used to say, I think you're better suited to be somewhere else. This might not be where you want to be. And what they would do in the old days, before you had transfer portal, they would make your life such that you would want to not be there anymore.
Make it unfavorable.
They would make the conditions unfavorable for you to want to be there. So there's a lot of ways that this could have happened. I'm sure there's more details that'll come out about the story. But from his side of the story, he's saying it wasn't his choice. He's leaving, and he went and did the worst thing possible.
Yeah. And that's like the sole reason, right? You could be in that Texas football building and genuinely believe that Parker Livingston's not going to be as big a part of the offense. It's not going to be as big a loss as one might think when you lose a receiver who had almost half of 1,000 receiving yards, right? When you had some of the big plays this year that he had and some of the big games that he had, you can say, okay, well, if we get Cam Coleman, then it really doesn't matter. But then when you see him go to Oklahoma, maybe that changes your mind a little bit, right? Which forces me to kind of ask this question here. If a player like that here at South Carolina left, wide receiver, tight end, defensive back, whatever, and you weren't necessarily as mad about them leaving because you thought there was something better coming up on the horizon, but they decided to go to Clemson, would that change your mind on that player and that departure? I think it would for me.
Yeah, and we don't have as much. This happens a little bit more in baseball, right? You have more. That kind of seems to be a thing where we last year especially, I think we might have 3 or 4 players from Clemson. That happens a little bit more there in baseball, but football's, I think, still a little bit different. And you have a couple of situations. Yeah, it would still it would change my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
Especially if it was somebody who had played in the game, somebody who had participated in the rivalry, somebody who understood the gravity of the situation. You would kind of be like, I don't love that. He would probably not be on my like list, I would say.
That would definitely be one of those things. Like now this year, whenever those teams play, I'm going to be watching for. I'm like Parker Livingstone revenge game coming up.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Well, here's the thing for Texas, too. One of the reasons why I was curious that he was in the portal at all, even if there was nudging for him to do so, there are 3 leading receivers last year, Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore Jr., Parker Livingstone. 2 of them will not be returning. DeAndre Moore volunteered to go into the transfer portal. He didn't even play in the bowl game. Parker Livingstone did. Now you're down 2 of your top 3 receivers. Ryan Wingo's coming back, and he was an 800-yard receiver, so pairing him with Cam Coleman I can see as being a valuable or viable option for Texas. But if I knew DeAndre Moore Jr. was leaving, which they already knew, I don't think I'm pushing that kid out. And it's not like, Texas is really balling on a budget here. If you have to pay a little more to keep him, I think I would have tried hard to keep him because the possibility would always exist that they could go play for someone like Oklahoma.
Yeah, this is a really interesting story because I have a feeling that Texas has another side to this story of what he's saying being forced out. And obviously, like most stories, the truth will probably be somewhere in the middle.
Oh, yeah, for sure, which is why.
But he went to Oklahoma, though.
Yeah, he didn't just go play for somebody in the SEC. He went and go played for Oklahoma. But coming up next, we'll get to our pal Ray, and we'll also talk about what Ole Miss Athletic Director Keith Carter and Michigan legend Bo Schembechler have in common as we continue our discussion leading up to tonight's college football playoff semifinal between Ole Miss and Miami. All of that and more coming up next here in the early game. Before I tell you what Keith Carter and Bo Schembechler have in common and some interesting parallels between this Ole Miss football team and one particular national championship college basketball team, we'll go to the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Our pal Ray is on with us this morning. Good morning, Ray. Welcome back to the early game.
Good morning. Good morning. Hey, before I get on with this, I was just going to ask, are you guys coffee drinkers?
I am definitely a coffee drinker. My goodness.
Preston, what about you?
I am not.
Jed?
I am not either.
Wow, 2 out of 3 not. You guys are probably about 4 bells, I bet you. Hey man, that says a lot about all natural. So, wow.
Yeah, they're stronger than I am.
I was just thinking about it as I drinking my second cup of coffee, Preston. I'm thinking, I'm up usually around 5:30. But these guys, if they slept at 5:30, that'd be like sleeping in, But anyway, what I was going to get at, on ESPN, of course, they're showing these. I'm sorry, I said the 4-letter network. I hope that's okay. But they're showing these 30 for 30s with the Miami Hurricanes. And, they're talking about the first year when they won it in, that's the 83 season, and it was 1984 when they won it because it was January 1st. But if the Canes were to beat Ole Miss, the title game's in Miami. I think, man, I'm not one that believes in witchcraft and voodoo and all that, but I think it's like the stars are lining up for the Canes. And not to mention they have a very good team. I think from a line of scrimmage on offensive line, defensive line, I think they're as good as any team I've seen in a long time. Wouldn't you say that, Preston?
I would agree. And they're built in Cristobal's image. Yeah,
and their edge rushers, I mean, they may be as good as I've seen in 20 years. And I'm not just saying that. I mean, they are those guys get at it. But so I'm kind of pulling for the Hurricanes, kind of nostalgically, I guess. But I'm pulling for the Canes. And I was thinking about, offensive linemen that got into the transfer portal and went to Nebraska. So I started thinking about Coach Teasley. And I'm thinking, and I don't know, maybe it's playing out. We never know because, you don't burn bridges. When you're assistant coach, you're gone. You don't come back and say things. You just kind of do your business and go on. And I would do the same thing. But with this kid going to Nebraska, playing for Teasley after what happened this last year, I'm beginning to wonder, Preston, on the offensive line, did other people have their hands in it as well? I mean, I know the players that do so well. I mean, I look at Shula, and maybe even Beamer. I'm thinking other people had their hands in this as well with this failure of an offensive line. But that's just all I got to say, guys. But time will tell all, as it always does. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Appreciate the call as always. And, yeah, Miami, Ruben Bain's the real deal. Watch number 4 tonight on defense.
Yeah, he's really good.
And that's why I think Miami wins. I'm pulling for Ole Miss for the story. I think Miami wins. But one of the reasons why I'm pulling Ole Miss for the story is because there's an interesting parallel between them and the 88-89 Michigan Wolverine men's basketball team. This is incredibly well done by Seth Emerson over the Athletic. And I was reading this yesterday, and I was like, I really want to talk about this. Because for those who remember, I was not alive to remember this. But Bill Frieder was head coach at Michigan. They were a 3 seed going into the NCAA tournament. They're fresh off of a brutal beatdown at home against Illinois. And Bill and Bo Schembechler didn't necessarily have the best relationship. Bo Schembechler, who's the AD at Michigan, and he decides that he wants to take the Arizona State job. However, Bo Schembechler doesn't let Coach Frieder coach in the NCAA tournament. He says, that's where the Michigan man thing comes from. He says, I want a Michigan man coaching Michigan. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't allow Coach Frieder to coach in that NCAA tournament run. He gets sent over to Arizona State earlier than he would have wanted.
He leaves.
Yep. And Steve Fisher, as the assistant coach, takes over as head coach. Well, that Michigan team went on, led by star player Glenn Rice, who really kind of blossomed in that tournament run, to win a national title. But the big thing here that I think is such a fun parallel was one of the teams they had to beat to get to that national title, to get to the Final Four, was the Illinois team that not only massacred them in Ann Arbor, but beat them in Champaign, Illinois earlier that year. That Illinois team beat Michigan twice, and Michigan then had to beat them on a neutral floor to be able to get to that Final Four. Kind of like the same way that Ole Miss had to beat the one team that beat them this year to be able to get to their Final Four by beating Georgia.
Yeah, it was a really cool story because you talked about how the Michigan players were essentially pulling for the Ole Miss players because they understood exactly what they were going to. And also this idea of like, there's really ever nothing new. Things have happened before, we just sort of forget because history makes us forget things. But I thought that was an interesting story how Bo Schembechler was like, nah, man, you are taking another job.
Go.
You cannot coach this team. I don't understand. I don't understand what the logic is. Apparently, Keith Carter was of the same assumption.
Yes.
And I think that, and I, as I stated, I think that's the correct choice.
Right. Especially in today's college sports, where back then, Coach Frieder couldn't have taken Glenn Rice, with him to Arizona State without Glenn Rice sitting out a year, right? There were still some things that kept players from being just willfully able to go and follow their coach wherever, right? But now it's a little different with Ole Miss and LSU because in conference, not too terribly far away from each other. Lane stealing a bunch of players would have been very likely, but I do love the fact that those players, those Michigan players, are sitting and watching the college football playoff now, and they are actively cheering for Ole Miss because if anybody can relate, it's definitely them.
Absolutely.
But I don't think any of those players would be cheering for anybody to go to Lawsuit City because that's what we're going to go next. The ETA is here in 5 minutes, so kicking off hour number 2, college football transfer portal is starting to get messy, and it's time to settle some of these disputes, and we'll do so by going to one of our favorite municipalities, fictional municipalities, coming up next in the early game.
Still just one accident to make you aware of, and that's Wood Trail Drive between Sharps Hill Road and Highway 321. 70 today for the high, going to be pretty nice, just a little on the overcast side. Some clouds tomorrow, 74. Few afternoon or evening showers coming in on Saturday, but a high of 78 before the cooling trend. It gets ushered in Sunday, looking for a high of 57 with an overnight low of 28. So it's not spring quite yet, just kind of getting a taste of it. 46 right now.
Now, I love the Wu-Tang Clan as much as the next guy here. As hour number 2 of the early game starts right now. But with what we got coming up next here in this segment, I think some different music needs to be played. For those who don't know, I'm Elijah Campbell. He's Preston Thorne. She's Jen Jensen. And we are going back to Lawsuit City.
It's been a while.
Oh, since early fall?
It's been a minute. We knew we'd be back here, though.
Well, we knew it wasn't going anywhere, right? Like, insert your favorite city here. You know, you love visiting. And if you haven't been in a long time, you know you're going to go back, right?
We'll be back. We'll be back.
My favorite cities on planet Earth, St. Augustine, Florida. Haven't been in a while. It was 4th of July of 24. That don't mean I'm not coming back. And I look forward to the day that I get to go back. And I think Lawsuit City has been that way for us, mostly because we're not the participants in
I
what's
was
going
going
on
to say
in
that makes
Lawsuit
a
City.
big difference. We're not the participants. It's
Yeah.
more fun to go and visit.
It's way more fun.
Nice place to visit. Would not want to live there.
But you may be wondering why we're going back to Lawsuit City. Well, transfer portal is
Ripe.
for lawsuits because Washington quarterback Damon Williams, who had a really good year this year for Washington. Now, Washington as a team, I thought was the most holding serve team in the Power Four this year in terms of they didn't beat anybody they weren't supposed to. They didn't lose to anybody that they weren't supposed to lose to. Like, they were about the most predictable team in college football. However, their offense wasn't the reason for that. They had a lot of explosive offensive games. Damon Williams has turned himself into a really good college quarterback, and credit Jed Fish and that staff for developing him into a really good, viable FBS Power 4 option at the quarterback position. But to catch you up, I'll let Ross Dellinger here do the dirty work for me because he tweets about this thread. He tweets this thread about Damon Williams, and here's the situation. This is per Ross Dellinger at Yahoo Sports. Williams signed a one-year rev share agreement with Washington worth about $4 million. The agreement is a Big Ten template document used by all league members and built for situations like this. He says the agreement prohibits a player from entering the portal once signed, and this is why Washington is now currently refusing to enter his name into the portal, and prohibits the player's NIL rights to be used by any other school, though the player can sign outside marketing agreements. Now, this is something apparently that Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti has been working on for a while, and ironically enough, he is in Seattle for the funeral of the Washington women's soccer player who passed away from cancer earlier this year.
A key part of this conversation. Continue.
Yes, especially when it comes to the optics of this, right? So Washington officials were expected yesterday to communicate with Damon Williams' representatives regarding the situation and the next steps. Well, why is this an issue now after signing that deal? Because he entered the transfer portal 4 days after signing the deal and is allegedly being contacted by LSU.
You don't say. Look who's on the scene if there's some mess to be thrown around. You don't imagine this guy would be there, would you?
Niccolo Machiavelli has a new favorite college football coach, and his name is Lane Kiffin. So, with Washington refuting to enter Williams' name into the portal, he is not permitted to hold conversations with other programs. which now means Washington officials already suspect that Williams has already held conversations with other programs. Duh. And the school plans to submit any tampering evidence to the league and NCAA because LSU, of course, is believed to be the school most interested in Williams. Well, this is where we get into the whole lawsuit city thing because we are discussing a contract that was signed that, in theory, right, should be enforceable. But because DeMond Williams isn't technically an employee with the university, that changes things, right? He is not considered an employee. Therefore, how enforceable can a contract like this be? That's always kind of been the crux of a lot of this, is that, yes, you can sign a contract, but how binding is it? That's a reason why Wisconsin took Miami to court, because Wisconsin signed a player, exact same scenario last year. Took that player and Miami to court, and that is obviously still in the courts right now. I don't think anything has been officially ruled on that. I don't expect it to for a while. I don't expect this specific case to be ruled upon for a while, but it has gotten incredibly messy, and there's a reason that we're back in lawsuit city because of it.
And here's the thing. Ethically, once you sign a contract, you should honor that contract. Once you sign a contract.
That's the
ethically thing. But we're not talking about ethics. We're talking about legalities, and those are very different concepts. There is no legal precedent for any of this that is happening. The transfer portal is not a real thing. It's not a legally binding place. It doesn't exist. We've all just kind of agreed to it, but it's not a thing. And so even with Washington saying that we're not going to enter your name in the portal, no problem. You don't need to, because I'm still a student. I can still unenroll from university, and I can go enroll in another university. The portal's not a thing, right? It's like, if we were talking about the GPS, the portal is a way to get from one place to another, but I can take the scenic route.
You can. It might take you a little longer.
I don't have to do this. So the portal, the idea that they're not putting them in the portal is not a thing. But here's where this is all messy, because it said that the University of Washington is talking to DeMond Williams Jr.'s representatives. Well, amazingly, the head coach, Jed Fish, is represented by Wasserman Football. Would you want to take a guess who DeMond Williams is represented by?
The same agency?
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
We have a conflict of interest here.
We do. Oh, my goodness.
This is amazing. And then if we dig back a little bit further, how did DeMond Williams get to Washington when Jed Fish got to Washington? And they have the same representatives. Now, this is all this is all why this is a very thing that is ripe for lawsuit city. And with any contracts, whether we're talking transfer portal, NCAA, or just your life in general, it's really only as good as the two people who sign it. Because, I mean, you can sign a contract, but good luck. If the two people that are signing it if one person signs a contract and has no intention of honoring it, all right, good luck.
Yeah.
You're going to either have to try and find some ways to enforce that, or you're just kind of out of a deal. So even the concept societally of a contract, it really only comes down to, do you want to honor the agreement that we made?
Yeah.
And can your lawyer, if it goes to that far, can your lawyer get this to be done? I don't know, man. I don't know. It seems like Washington's kind of out of a quarterback here.
Yeah, and this is the thing that's so frustrating, because I think anybody can agree that if you agree to sign with that school to get $4 million from their rev share,
right?
That's a lot of money.
No doubt.
That's also high-end quarterback money, right? Like, he is going to be compensated by the university, as well as almost any quarterback in college football. They're willing to do that for you. And you decide 4 days later to back out of it?
Yeah.
Because somebody else gave you a call? Like, ethically, that's where I would say confidently that's wrong.
That's no doubt about it. I 100% agree with that. You signed a deal, and once you sign a deal for a very adequate amount of money, even if somebody comes with a little bit more money, this is where you have to have the fortitude to say, wow, that's really cool, but I've already signed this, and this is what I'm doing.
You can even be honest and say, you know what, I really want to. I want to badly, but you know what?
I already made this deal.
I signed. Yeah.
But again,
a deal.
that would be an ethical thing, but that's not a legal thing. And there's no way to hold them to it legally because they are not employees, and this is not enforceable contracts. The schools have an easy way to do this, but they don't want to. And so we're going to be stuck in this limbo a lot of times. And when folks don't play by the right ethics, and if everybody doesn't play by the same, because that's all. I mean, this is a really interesting story, but this is all of this is only held up by you and me agreeing that we're playing by sort of the same rules. Yeah. And once I decide that I'm not playing by those rules anymore, it all falls apart. It look kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like
a whole lot. Yeah. It all
of this,
falls
all
apart.
of this. You know what I'm saying?
It doesn't really hold much, which is really why we're in this mess, is because the NCAA's operated for so long under illegality that now we get into a situation where we have to just play everybody based off their word, and not everybody's going to be true to their word.
Right.
And then kind of tying it back to why Tony Petitti was already in Seattle, Big Ten commissioner.
Yeah.
Damon Williams decided to make that announcement that he's going into the transfer portal during said funeral, where his teammates were there at it. Almost everybody from the athletic department was there. The Big Ten commissioner flew into Seattle for it, and that was the time he decided to announce that he was doing this.
Yeah, I mean the players come out of the funeral. I won't say that he decided to do it during the funeral. He did it, and it happened to be
during the funeral. Yes. I don't know if he maniacally was like, "What's the worst time for me to do this?" It just happened to be the worst.
It happened to be the worst time. Yeah. So the players are coming out of a situation where the mourning and all I said, and they see that. Yeah, it's a difficult situation. Damon Williams not a good guy in this situation. He's the bad guy in this situation. Maybe he'll learn from this. Maybe he won't. Maybe he won't, or whatever the case is. You have Lane Kiffin, who obviously is aware of the situation, does not care because he doesn't play by those same rules. Because, again, as I'll say it again at 7 o'clock, he quit on his team in the middle of a season to take another job. So, obviously, Lane is not playing by any of these rules, despite all of the hot yoga that he does and all of the meditating and all of the devotionals that he posts on X. He's not playing by any type of societal rules. He does not care. And so it's only perfect that it seems like he would be the main culprit on this. So he probably would go to the coach that deserves him. And
that's the wild thing with this to me is when we go to SEC Media Days in July in Tampa, and I'm going to be sitting there patiently waiting for the LSU day. And if Lane Kiffin goes up there in his opening statement like almost every other coach does and complains about a lack of rules,
yeah,
somebody has to say something in that room at that point. Somebody has to and say, okay, well, you had no problem circumventing a deal somebody else signed. And it's kind of like the Bryce Drew thing. Not Bryce Drew. I keep wanting to call him Bryce Drew. Scott Drew over at Baylor, their men's basketball coach, bringing in a player who got drafted into the NBA because legally you can, right? There's a little bit of a loophole there. He brought him in, and there's serious backlash for it. And his response is, well, it's within the confines of the rules. Why ain't anybody else doing this?
Yeah,
right.
And then you see, moving forward, if you're the University of Washington, yeah, that's the quarterback you wanted. But now, do you really want somebody who obviously has stated that they don't want to be there? Like your money's not good enough for them. I mean, that relationship's sort of over now.
Yeah, I would say, okay, you're not getting this $4 million. We'll give it to somebody else.
Well, yeah, obviously,
yeah,
because you've already stated that you didn't want to. Well, there's not plenty, and that's the situation with the market. There's not plenty.
There's some.
I mean, he's good, but like Brendan Sorsby's was good, but there's not a lot. Sam Levitt still he's still out there. Maybe they're going to trade. That's another funny part of the story.
We do have a trade. I wish we had like the little NFL draft alert, the do because we do have a trade.
Transfer portal trade.
Because I didn't even realize it till putting together the pieces now. You know how we talked yesterday that Purdue interior offensive lineman Hank Purvis.
Never nervous Hank Purvis
is coming to Columbia, South Carolina for his duties as an offensive lineman. Well, Boaz Stanley, who's in the transfer portal, essentially maybe a replacement for Boaz, is going to Purdue. So we didn't mean to work out this way. However, we have one of my favorite things in college sports, which is the indirect player trade. Every time. That's the trade we had to announce. Boaz Stanley is going to Purdue. Never nervous. Hank Purvis is coming to South Carolina. And there will be no cash considerations.
No cash considerations. A 1-for-1. And this really goes back to Fran Brown was saying, like, basically, essentially, teams end up swapping players because there's only but so many. So
it was like the Tennessee UCLA quarterback trade that we got last spring. Tennessee sends Nico Imaliava to UCLA for Joey Aguilar. Cash considerations, or maybe a player to be named later. We don't do that anymore like we used to. At least they still do in baseball. But coming up next, it's the early game morning meeting. We talked about the men's basketball team getting a big win on the road in Baton Rouge last night, or from 2 nights ago. Dawn Staley and her team is hitting the road and going to Fayetteville, Arkansas. We'll discuss the women's team and where we're at with Tanaya Latson in the newest addition on the team coming up next here in the early game. Quick word with my friends over at the Ecton Law Firm. Look, if tax issues, income or business tax issues, are something that's bothering you, weighing you down, or causing you additional stress, well, I have something for you, and it's a phone number, 803-771-9800. You can call that number, talk with the representatives of their Ecton Law Firm, and be able to set up a free consultation. One of my favorite things about John and his team is that free consultation where you can meet with them in person, discuss all these issues, and how to attack them at the source. Because at the Ecton Law Firm, they certainly understand whatever challenges that you or your business are facing, and that's why John and his team are ready to offer you the peace of mind that you deserve with those proven local solutions. Again, escape that IRS maze by making that call today, 803-771-9800, or you can always visit them at ectonlawfirm.com. That's ECTON lawfirm.com.
No accidents to report at this time. We do have slow-going traffic, obviously, I-26 eastbound from about mile marker 101. Reports of heavy traffic, Liebhart Road southbound between Mineral Springs and Highway 1. That is also slowing things down a little bit. Spring-like temperatures continue, 70 for the high today, 74 tomorrow, 78 on Saturday before we get that afternoon or evening rain that'll come in, and that will usher in some more normal, more winter-like conditions for us. Sunday's high 57, overnight low of 28. So we'll take it right now, 46 on 107.5 The Game.
We have player updates for South Carolina's women's basketball team because one of your best players returning from injury, maybe a midseason acquisition. I guess we're just waiting on internal paperwork to see if she's able to play. Well, we got some clarification on that yesterday. We'll get to that and some calls for this morning's morning meeting.
Good morning. Good morning. Repeat after me. Today will be an awesome day.
Yeah, well,
Let's go.
we can feel it.
Good morning, great today. Today will be an awesome day. Good morning, great today. Today will be an awesome day.
And tonight, going down at Arkansas in Fayetteville, Dawn Staley and her South Carolina Gamecocks will be facing the Hogs. Trying to find where you could watch that game tonight. But Arkansas, as of right now, 11-6 overall. Not doing too hot in conference play. They are 0-2, so their last two games, their conference slate so far, they hosted Vanderbilt, got beat 88-71, went to Alabama, got beat 77-48. And when you look at Bart Torvik, which does the numbers kind of similar to Ken Palm, they're number 111 in the country. Not a particularly challenging opponent. Number 104 on offense, 159 on defense. And if you look at some of the trait numbers, which are the ones that I value the most, I like seeing what is it that you do better than anybody else. They really don't do a lot better than anybody else. They're a good offensive rebounding team, and they are top 30 in the country in terms of opponent free throw rate. But I firmly expect South Carolina to go in there and dominate, regardless of who is going to be available tonight.
Right. And so when you're watching the women's basketball team, unfortunately, you're not watching to see if they win. You're watching to see how they win, right? You want to see
how much they win by.
How much they win by and what are the things that they need to get done. So in the game tonight, if you was to give me two things that you would like to see that would indicate progress or improvement throughout the season, what would you want to see tonight?
I want to see Tessa Johnson take some scoring reins a little bit. I want to see Joyce Edwards have a good defensive night. And I want to see Maddie McDaniel get some more minutes and prove that she can be a good, reliable, off-the-bench contributor. I don't even care about scoring as much. I'm even cool if this team, because you know how like last year's team had some games where their bench unit outscored the entire unit of the other team. That happened plenty of times last year, right? I remember one game at Vanderbilt where it happened, where South Carolina's bench outscored Vanderbilt's entire team. And that was a really good tournament Vanderbilt team, right? I don't necessarily think that's something you need. It's a luxury to get to have. Trust me, don't get me wrong. Having that level of bench scoring is a luxury. But can you get a couple players off your bench to be reliable? And I think for South Carolina, the one player I'm interested in to see right now that the roster is a little shorter right now, and your bench is going to have to give you maybe some more minutes. I want to see Maddie McDaniel give you something off the bench in terms of offensive facilitation, seeing what the team number looks like. I love looking at things like offensive rating, right? Like what does your team do per 100 possessions while you are on the floor? And right now for Maddie McDaniel, her season offensive rating is 122, meaning that they're scoring about 1.22 points per possession while she is on the floor. That's really good. I want to see her continue to do that, be a part of an offense that is still able to generate a lot of points, even if they have to go to the bench, because you're still going to be without Tania Latson tonight, and you're going to be without Alicia Turnabes. I think it's how you say that. I've been trying to get clarification.
Yeah, it's always
Alicia,
interesting.
we'll just call
Yeah, it's always interesting because I'm only reading it. I haven't heard anybody say it yet, so I didn't know whether it was Alicia or Alicia. So it's Alicia.
Alicia.
But more importantly, you know how tall she is?
Please say she's 6'7".
6'7".
Oh, again! All the kids in the car are going nuts.
Oh my gosh.
For the morning meeting.
Sorry, parents.
Alicia, 6'7".
Sorry, parents. Anarchy has broken loose. You can send all your complaints to Preston Thorne at Coach P Tweets on Twitter, and I'll take them too. I definitely.
I just hope when she is officially cleared and the paperwork goes through that when they announce her and they be like the 6'7" French woman Alicia, and all the crowd goes crazy.
Now the good news is Latson and Alicia are practicing.
Okay.
They are practicing. Per David Cloninger, they're practicing. Probably won't play tomorrow. Don Staley told him. They're ramping up, though. So I think a return for Tania Latson, inevitable. An insertion of Alicia into the lineup, starting lineup or off the bench, inevitable. We just don't have that yet. So there's still something to watch for when it comes to looking at this team as they're constructed right now in terms of the roster that's going to be available at Arkansas and seeing how they're able to handle a team that they should beat, but seeing how other players acclimate and fill in roles that maybe they won't be in when it comes down to tournament time, but it is incredibly valuable experience. We'll go to the AAA Heating and Air phone lines because we have some calls that we want to get to, starting off with Donnie. Donnie, good morning. Welcome to the early game.
How y'all doing this morning?
Pretty good. You doing all right?
Yes, sir. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, sir.
I guess what I want to say is really a question. Just kind of maybe a rally call to Shane Beamer and the rest of the recruiting staff. Hell, not just Shane Beamer, SEC, or any coaches who happen to be recruiting against Lane Kiffin. It seems like it'd be real easy to recruit against LSU these days because it'd be easy to throw him under the bus. He quits on his teams. Give me one team that he's actually completed or completed the job. He quit on a national championship potential team.
Yeah, right.
And kudos to them kids, man, because, I mean, they are playing with their hearts on the line. And remind me of soldiers, you know, who go to war for this country. But at the end of the day, when it all comes down to want the bullets and you're in the trenches, it's about the man next to you. So I'm a big Ole Miss fan tonight. So I just wanted to put that out there in case nobody has ever thought about it. I don't know the unspoken rule of throwing other coaches under the bus, but he don't play by any rules.
Exactly.
So throw him under the bus, y'all.
Exactly.
And I'll hang up and take your comments.
I agree with that 100%, Donnie. Again, if somebody's not playing by any rules, why should you be protecting them? And I will say it again. As you said eloquently, Donnie, the man quit on a potential national championship team to take what he thought was a better job.
He wanted to go to a place where he thought he could get to where Ole Miss is right now.
Right.
The dumbest thing.
Just want to make sure everybody's clear on that.
The ultimate irony is that the man ran towards an opportunity that he already had, that he is running away from. And what I like about Donnie's call there, too, is this should provide some good negative recruiting fodder because, look, if I'm recruiting against LSU, I can say, yeah, we might not be able to throw as much money at you, but do you want to be in the transfer portal again whenever he inevitably leaves for an NFL job? This isn't like LSU coaching the LSU football team is the pinnacle of football coaching. It's a great job. Don't get me wrong. It's a great job. However, Lane Kiffin's had great jobs. The Tennessee job was a great job. He left for the next best thing, right? Ole Miss is a really good job. He left for the next best thing. What if LSU reaches some modicum of success and an NFL job opens up and the Atlanta Falcons come calling or the Cleveland Browns or another opportunity in the NFL? Do you think he's just going to say, no, I'm turning it down. I'm happy where I am? What part of his track record tells you he's going to be just cool where he's at?
Zero.
The easiest thing in college football right now should be negatively recruiting, playing for Lane Kiffin, because who knows how long you're going to actually get to play for him. So Donnie hits the nail on the head right there. We'll take a break. Coming up on the other side, we'll give you the early game underdog challenge results, and we'll get to Grant. So Grant, hold on through the break, and we'll get to you coming up next here on the early game.
Up in the Chapin area, Three Dog Road near Dutch Fork Road. There's an accident there. Also, Coon Road at Broad River and I-26 westbound at I-77. That's exit 116. We do have a report of an accident. So be mindful this morning, and I want you to have a good day overall. 70 for the high, 74 tomorrow, 78 on Saturday. Some showers could be coming in that Saturday afternoon or evening. And then that will bring in some cooler temperatures. So soak in the spring-like stuff while you can. Right now, it's 46 on 107.5 The Game.
Now, before we officially announce our winner of the early game underdog challenge, we'll get to hang a banner because we did participate by text over the last 2 weeks, and now we officially have a winner. But before we do that, we'll go back to the AAA Heating and Air phone lines because Grant is on the line with us and wants to weigh in on the discussion. Good morning, Grant. Welcome to the early game.
Good morning, guys. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too. Doing all right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for taking the call. I know you guys I've been on hold. I should have taken or written down like notes on what I was going to say to keep it more organized. Because I know I'm interrupting you guys in your notes and your planned show. I'll try to be brief. I'm an out-of-stater. 5 years I've lived in Columbia. I come from the Midwest. I always looked at the SEC as kind of like a sleazy organization.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was because, jealousy, right? You guys had Nick Saban versus the world. When I was in my youth, I would say youth, but I'm only 36. But I am going to sound like an old man with this take that I'm giving you. Looking at one is like the way media reports what's going on, specifically now with LSU, and I mean sports media. But also in the past with just anything controversial when it comes to like SEC teams getting in the playoffs. Is it because they're better or is it because they have the mouse overlord working and it's going to be more money for the networks and because they have a bigger player base? That's up for debate. I think it's been a really big debate the last few years, especially the last 2 years, because the SEC's kind of super underperformed against other conferences like the Big Ten. And right now, the last team in the SEC that's in the fight, Ole Miss, shouldn't be. Looking at their season and especially all the turmoil that they've gone through, that team is incredibly resilient for being where they are right now. And I think it would be a Cinderella story. So I'm a Big Ten guy. If it's not one of the Big Ten teams that ends up winning it, I think it should be Ole Miss just because the story there. And because it would be a giant boot to the chest to in my opinion, just the skeeziest guy in college sports right now, Lane Kiffin. That guy is a terrible role model, it seems like. He's a terrible individual person, incredible football coach in the tactical, recruiting, everything like that, but just a terrible person. This guy will sell his morals for a price tag or for personal gain. And he doesn't care who it affects. Look at that whole Ole Miss team that he just screwed over, leaving them in the middle of the season and taking their coaches. And I think the sports media, especially you guys at South Carolina, you have a personal stake in this. He's poaching your coaches, and your coach is so upset about it that he comes in a press conference is like, this guy broke unwritten rules, never called me, not even a courtesy, just came in and snatched this guy out from under me, no warning. I think you guys should be way more upset, and I'm going to throw a little shade here. I take offense because I get upset because I hear you guys reporting, and they're like, yeah, well, it's not the right thing to do, but he's getting his money, or these players, it's not the right thing to do, but they're getting their bag. Like, that shouldn't be our focus. Because the overall audience of this product, right, of college football and the kids that are playing college football, young, impressionable men. We shouldn't be telling them that it's okay if you do something immoral or morally gray as long as you're getting paid for it. That's a terrible precedent to set. And the media has a big influence on everybody, but especially impressionable youth. I think we should be calling it for what it is. This guy is immoral. You should place your morals above the bag. And that should be a huge focus. Lane Kiffin is deservedly the most hated guy in college football right now.
Mm-hmm.
I hope LSU gets hit with like a death penalty from the NCAA and all of this is for naught and they still got to pay him $100 million.
Get SMU.
Because you shouldn't, I don't know, we shouldn't be endorsing this.
Right. Yeah.
But thanks for taking my call. I appreciate it. I'll listen for the rest, guys.
Appreciate the call, Grant.
Appreciate you, yeah. And it's always great to hear because we're in our Columbia bubble, so it's always good to hear outsiders' perspective on some of the things that we talked about. But I agree almost 100% with what Grant said, and I think every time Ole Miss takes the ball on offense tonight, they should say Charlie Weiss Jr. is calling plays because Lane Kiffin quit.
Yep. and refer to it as quitting.
Right, yeah. Because Lane Kiffin quit and left his team in a lurch because he wanted to do something.
You know, I would love to see something on their, like a patch on their jerseys or something on their helmets that some type of a gesture of some type.
Like a middle finger sticker?
Yeah, exactly. That's where I was trying to find a nice way to say that. But yeah, anything that just basically is telling Lane Kiffin, to you, my friend.
My favorite things about sports is that sports oftentimes mirrors real life. A lot of the moral conundrums that we experience in sports are moral conundrums that we might face in our real life here. And the Damon Williams thing is a lesson kind of on balancing with what Grant said, like your ethics, like morally, what is correct. If you made that promise to go play for somebody, you signed the dotted line, you're going to get $4 million at the minimum, right? Because that doesn't keep him from getting additional outside NIL, right? That doesn't prohibit him from getting more than just the $4 million. That's almost just like a base, right? Is the $4 million that he's getting from the school's rev share, life-changing money. That's really good money. Washington's believing in you, and they're paying you like one of the top quarterbacks in college football because they believe you're one of the top quarterbacks in college football. And then backing out on that 4 days later is ethically the wrong decision, right? And you have to kind of balance that it's a decision that he had to make, and I'm sure there's probably going to be some regret over that because of just how badly this is transpiring and how public of a mess this has become, that it's a decision he had to make. I don't endorse it, right? It's a decision he had to make, and he made it. And unfortunately, it is a bad look on him, and it's a bad look on LSU for tampering and doing that too.
Right, but LSU has clearly stated that they don't care.
Yeah, they don't care. Yeah.
They don't care what the look is because they signed Lane Kiffin, and when you sign Lane Kiffin, you know all that comes with it. Despite ESPN, despite his agents, despite everybody trying to do this whole cleanup job and sanitize him and make him into this new person, he is who he is. And he's shown that over and over and over again. Through this situation, the Sterling Lucas situation, all of this keeps coming back to Lane. And so at this point, you get to decide. If you're cool with it, all right, cool. At least Lane's not lying about who he is anymore. We know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
Now you get to decide whether you want him. I, for one, I'm not with it.
Nope. I'm not going to buy tickets to the Gallagher stand-up performance and get mad that bits of watermelon are in my hair whenever I leave the auditorium, right?
Oh, no.
Oh, no, I didn't know this was going to happen. Why am I covered in watermelon? This wasn't on the ticket stub. No, if you buy tickets to the Lane Kiffin show, don't be surprised when it's all about Lane Kiffin. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we will crown our champion for the Early Game Underdog Challenge in 2025. And we'll also tell you who is cooked because there was an SEC basketball game last night that has told me that this particular team, not the program, but this team has never been more cooked. And I'll tell you who that is coming up next. For the early game underdog challenge, we have no more picks to give out because the season is over. It is a 19-week contest, but we will give you the updates because we did participate for 2 weeks off air, and I've got them here in the spreadsheet. In week 18, Jen took Virginia plus 4.5 against Missouri. Check mark. She took the Dolphins plus 5.5 against the Bengals with Quinn Ewers as the starter. Also check mark. I went 0-2. Team WIS went 0-2. Preston took the Falcons plus 7.5 against the Rams.
Rise up.
To get them into the 90s and make it to where it was really competitive going into the last week. Well, Jen tacks onto her lead with Robbie Ashford and Wake Forest beating Mississippi State. That was worth 3.5 points. Team WIS got a good 3.5 from the Steelers beating the Ravens. And Preston goes 0-2. I'm 0-1, but I did take Oregon plus 4 against Indiana. So that's the only game left to decide. However, I am so far behind, it does not matter.
Mathematically eliminated, I believe they say.
I've been mathematically eliminated since like week 13. Like the last 6 weeks, I have been mathematically eliminated. So with all that being said, we can get a round of applause to Jen Jensen. With 110 points on the season. And an overall record of 16-22. Now, Team WIS also went 16-22, but Jen hit on some big fish earlier in the season, or big dogs, if you will.
So I can pick losers, is what we're saying. I'm going to take a totally different approach in our NASCAR picks contest because clearly trying to pick someone to really win based on, all the things, that's not worked for me for the past several seasons. So I think I'm going to take the approach that I took with this and see if I can't make that parlay into a really good NASCAR season for me.
I think it'd be fair to use the strategy in the Corley Pool Solutions Checker Flag Challenge to pick underdogs because you've clearly proven that you pick underdogs better than anyone else.
I guess I do. What are the odds?
Now, fun fact, I've been doing this contest with my friends, right? We've been doing this for 4 years now. We have just finished our fourth not final year because we're going to do it next year too. Our 4th year of doing this, and we just submit picks like in a text thread, right? And the overall record in those 4 years for points in a single season was 106.5, the most anybody's gotten in a single season. So Jen's 110 is a record for the most anybody's gotten in an individual season in her first year playing.
There you go.
So not just winning it and breaking records in the process.
I'm telling you what, this is going to be a breakout year for me in so many ways.
We need to hang a banner. I need to get some type of
underdog banner.
An underdog banner.
That would be cool. Underdog, like the old underdog cartoon.
Yes.
That would be so fun.
Back there in that studio.
Yeah. I'll come collect my prize later.
Yes. We'll have some type of trophy. We'll have to get creative.
There's candy out in the hallway. I guess I can, take a sucker and be victorious.
That's the trophy, is the sucker. Holding it up like it's the Stanley Cup.
Right.
But Team WIS finishing in second with 102.
Nice.
Preston in third with 96.5. And pending Oregon, Indiana. I took Oregon plus 4. I'm at 64.5.
But I tell you what, had Preston hit in the final week,
he
would have surpassed me, and you were close.
He was awfully
close.
Watching. Preston in the final week took the Chargers plus 12.5 at the Broncos and the Jets plus 7.5 at the Bills.
I had to go big.
You have to, yeah. That's strategy. At that point, you have to take the large underdog and just hope for the best. But before we get out of here in hour number 2, it's time to put some folks on the grill. And now, obviously, it's the week of Black Monday. So Kevin Stefanski, cooked. Pete Carroll, cooked.
Unfortunately.
John Harbaugh, another one of those names we have not discussed in terms of being cooked all year. He is finished on the grill. And Raheem Morris, cooked. Yeah, I think we have been putting him on there. Mike McDaniel survives. I guess he's going back in. He's getting off the grill and will not be consumed.
Yeah, some pieces of meat you can just cook forever and they just don't, like chicken thigh or something. You just keep it.
Harder.
Yeah, it's harder to char.
Mike
Still
McDaniel is char proof.
Aaron Glenn. So far.
Getting there. He's only a year in, but
it hasn't happened yet. I was assuming that it was going to happen.
He's probably getting a courtesy year right now, I guess. Because the Jets don't want to continue to be that franchise that's firing folks after a year. But I wanted to put an interesting submission to the grill outside of the NFL, outside of football. Kentucky basketball.
Oh, no.
Now, I will preface it by saying this.
Kentucky Joe, where are you?
I am a believer in Mark Pope, and I'm not saying you should fire him. Mark Pope's on the grill. He's cooked. Mark Pope isn't on the grill. But the 2025-2026 Kentucky Wildcats, cooked. 0-2 in SEC play. Alabama handled them, which I expected. I think Alabama is really good. But Missouri, I don't think, is really good. And Missouri went to Rupp last night and won 73-68. This is a team that was supposed to be built to be great offensively. They're 47th in offensive efficiency. They're better defensively this year, which is the ironic part, is that they can actually D up a little bit. But offensively, they were not built for the specific type of offense that Mark Pope likes to run. That's an offense that is supposed to be conducive to a lot of off-ball movement, a lot of great action, zoom action, having a forward that is a legitimate playmaker. And they don't have a legitimate playmaking forward. They don't have the same assist rate that other Mark Pope teams have had, where his teams are constantly in the top 10 in assist rate. So I don't think Mark Pope is cooked. I think they did a terrible job of spending money and roster building this year. But the 2025-2026 Kentucky Wildcats, I'm officially putting on the grill. I'm out on them. I'm out completely. Sorry, Kentucky Joe. Had to do it, but I'm afraid that's the reality that this specific team is facing, and that can change next year. 2 hours in the books, one more to go. We'll go to Studio 803, and we'll continue breaking down the latest on the South Carolina Gamecock transfer portal progress next.
Are you looking for a countertop for a kitchen or a bath? Maybe you want to make some updates even in your yard with some hardscaping with a place to go. Carolina Stone Craftsman, just outside Columbia in Chapin. They get it. Kitchen and bath projects. They can be huge investments, and they work to really deliver the highest quality, most affordable granite, marble, and quartz while still providing the best customer service. And the customer service was key because when we were updating a couple of bathrooms and we needed countertops, we weren't sure. Is marble better? Is, granite better? Quartz? They helped educate us, helped us figure out what pieces would work best for us. And from there, every step of the process was flawless. I'm encouraging you that if you are looking for countertops for kitchen or bath, do reach out to Carolina Stone Craftsman and tell them Jen Jensen sent you. They're family owned and operated. I love that. Local businesses just beyond Columbia in Chapin and beyond your expectations, I promise. Visit them online, carolinastonecraftsman.com. I-26 westbound at I-77, still working that earlier slowdown. Also, Coon Road at Broad River Road. Nazareth at Cox Ferry, there's an accident there. And Three Dog Road near Dutch Fork Road, you'll encounter a slowdown as well. 70 for the high today, 74 for Friday. And Saturday, 78. Might see just a few evening showers, and that's what's going to bring in the cooler temperatures that will start on Sunday. So enjoy today. Right now, 47 on 107.5 The Game.
Hour number 3, the early game, third and long hour starts right now. I'm Elijah Campbell. He's Preston Thorne. She's Jen Jensen. He's Randy Young in the video control room here at Studio 803. We did get a text yesterday, Preston Thorne, that maybe like a rebranding to the early game third and manageable hour because since technically we're 2/3 of the way through the show,
I like it.
It's close to a first down. I was like, you know what? A point is made. Point is made, but we already have the cool signage and everything. But it is a good point. Here to start off hour number 3. An update on what South Carolina is doing in the transfer portal. No significant news in terms of commitments yesterday, but I think there was, or I guess there were some positive news in terms of who is returning, and I'm using the word returning very intentionally here, because Vicari Swain is one of those players. And out of all the players that announced they're coming back next year, I got Vicari Swain high on my list because of, A, what he can do as a punt returner. We've seen him either take some to the house, return 3 punts for a touchdown last year, or we've seen him make some good returns that get you into some favorable field positions. Also, one thing I didn't even get to discuss in the first hour is the growth he has made as a defensive back, too. He's not just one of those guys that you just have on the roster so he can return kicks. I thought we saw a lot from Vicari Swain last year in terms of his growth as a defensive back.
Yeah, he's a weapon for sure, and he's going to be somebody that's going to add to either the depth and or take a starting position in the defensive backfield this year. So it's hugely important. And as you were saying that, it just made me think that retention is just as important as commitments or recruitment during this time period for any business. If you know in business you want to retain the people that you have, we're not calling them employees because we don't want to. But you want to have the continuity, and so when you're looking at the people that have coming back, Vicari Swain being chief among them from yesterday's announcement, that's always a good thing for the construction of the roster.
It is, and that's the thing, is when you're getting the players that were your highlights, right? You think back on the highlights of South Carolina's season. Obviously, that number isn't large whenever you're 4-8, but I'd say one of the highlights was what you had in special teams with Vicari Swain. The fact that anytime he fields a punt, there is a possibility that he can take it to the house and change the course of a game is high, right? We saw him do it against Virginia Tech, that first game of the year, right? We were in a stalemate there in the second half where nobody was scoring, and it felt like you were going to be in a real dogfight in that game, and you got some breathing room when all Vicari Swain had to do was take a punt, make a couple guys miss, and he was then in the end zone, right? We felt a lot different about what the potential of the season was after that game than we end up feeling after the final game against Clemson. But that was a highlight. Being able to have him return, I think, was a very big plus. When it comes to the wide receiver room, Mazio Bennett announcing he's coming back, had a disappointing season last year.
Yeah, and I think this one is really important because of the fact that he did have a disappointing season last year. I think and this is just me speaking for myself, I think I was preparing myself to say, maybe the disappointing season after having a pretty solid freshman season, that doesn't really trend well for people staying.
Yes.
But what this tells me is that, one, he's choosing to stay, and that, two, the staff is choosing to keep him. So he didn't jump, nor did he get pushed into the transfer portal. And so I think that does maybe say a lot for his future. And whatever was going on last year, I don't know. He did regress, obviously, but maybe all parties involved feel like they can get back on track for the next year.
Yes, certainly. And that's the thing that it tells me about the coaching staff's thoughts on Mazio Bennett is that they believe in him.
Right.
Right. This isn't like a Parker Livingstone situation at Texas, which we talked about in the first hour of the show, where maybe he was pushed into the portal pool. At least according to Parker Livingstone, he was pushed into the portal pool. South Carolina not doing that with Mazio Bennett tells me that they still believe in his abilities, which I can totally see why they would, because he was such an asset in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And for one reason or another, he wasn't that asset in 25, but I think the coaching staff believes that what he was in 24 is maybe more indicative of the type of player.
And it can be, there's a reason why they have the term the sophomore slump. That is a thing. And that's not just hitting. That is a thing. You can apply it to Mazio. Maybe you could even apply it to Lenoris in a sense for his second year. That is a thing. What we don't know is the reasons why, and it could be a million different reasons. And I'm not going to speculate, and I have no clue why. But as you stated, moving forward, everybody feels like Mazio feels like this is the place where he can get back on track, and the staff feels like he's can get back to that talent. So I think that is encouraging.
And adding to the theme of retention, too, they are also going to retain Donovan Murph. And for those who know, he left high school a year early. He should have been a high school senior last year, or traditionally would have been a high school senior. He reclassified, was able to come to school earlier, but he wasn't able to participate in spring practice, so he got his first taste of like real college football whenever he came to campus in the fall and participated in camp. Wasn't like he had, 500 yards receiving or whatever, but he did play some good snaps. He did play in some big games. He was able to catch some passes, get a year of college football under his belt. And to me, Donovan Murph's one of the most talented players on this team because I saw what he did in high school, right? I got a front row seat to what he did when he was at Irmo. And he was one of those guys, even at wide receiver, like he could pass the alien test of you don't have to know anything about football, society at large to go to a football game and see that kid play at the high school level and know that that was the best kid on the field right there. You could identify that was the best player immediately. He was an incredible high school talent. And there's a reason that so many schools were trying to lobby for his services to play wide receiver for them. You got him here early. He's a year older. Now he is of traditional college age. I think getting him back, no matter what the stats were, he could have not even played last year. He could have redshirted, but you're right. But the fact that he is coming back, he's a little older. He's been in the weight room for the year.
Bingo.
He's been able to be in a college strength and conditioning staff. I think it's going to bode well, and I think he will have a much better year in terms of being productive for this offense than he was last season.
And we talk about it a lot for the big guys, but also the skinny guys too. Food and nutrition. Being able to have a year full of 3 squares and eating consistent meals, because you know how skinny dudes do in high school, man. Like they might eat here, they might eat there, or whatever the case is. Being able to have
what I do now is grazing.
Exactly. Having a consistent nutrition plan, being under a strength and development program for a year can only benefit him as he gets ready to take on the SEC schedule. So it's another, again, retaining the talent that you acquired last year is just as important as getting new people.
And then when it comes to the offensive line, too, because clearly I think you could have polled almost any Gamecock fan in terms of the position group that you want to see most addressed in the transfer portal, and I feel like it would have been a runaway offensive line for a multitude of reasons. One, it wasn't very good in 2025. That's the reason why you parted ways with Lonnie Teasley after the LSU game. And yeah, you got a new offensive line coach in there. But also, you lost a lot. Kason Henry entered the transfer portal. He's going to be playing at Louisville next year. Boaz Stanley entered the transfer portal.
Trade?
We had a trade. Do-do-do-do. He is going to Purdue, and you are getting never nervous Hank Purvis. He's gone, Boaz Stanley. Tree Babalade, transfer portal. He's going to be playing at Nebraska next year. Trovon Ball, transfer portal. He's going to be playing at Texas A&M next year. Josiah Thompson, transfer portal. He'll be playing TBD next year, right? That is still yet to be determined. So that's a lot of exits, right? It's a lot of snaps that you had from this past year going into the transfer portal. Shed Surratt's coming back. That was announced. And Nolan Hay also announced that he'll be coming back. And Nolan Hay, I thought, when he was healthy and able to play, was your best center that you had. Maybe your most reliable center that you had. Oh, and also Nick Sharp, Ronnie Newsom also not playing. Those are the other two interior offensive linemen who got a plethora of snaps in 2025. So you're getting somebody back in Shed Surratt who they like what they got from him coming out of high school, right? A very productive high school career. He was highly touted for a reason. Played as a true freshman and started as a true freshman in the SEC. Not easy to do. So I think there's still some potential there. And Nolan Hay, I thought, was very productive last year whenever he was able to play. There were some ups and downs, but I thought he was maybe your most reliable center last year. So I think getting him back is a positive, and maybe you have to rely less on the transfer portal. Still going to have to, right? I think we can expect Darius Gray to be able to get into the starting lineup early as the number one interior offensive lineman in high school football last year nationally, to come in and play as a freshman, but still a tall task for a freshman to come to the SEC in the interior of your offensive line and have to play a lot of snaps. So now it's maybe less that you have to do. It's still a lot, maybe not as much as you thought you would have to do going into this entire process.
And as you were saying that, I was thinking the thing about Shed is that he's so young. Coach Clemens probably sees this as like, he's actually my guy. I get a chance to teach him the way I want to do things. And maybe some of those older guys, you think about like Tree and Tro, who have been here for a while, maybe they didn't want to learn any new things, and maybe you don't want to teach them new things and things of that nature. But a young guy can take on this new coach, and he hasn't necessarily taken on the habits and traits of the old coach, so he has more opportunity to learn and grow within this new system.
He could be a little more moldable.
Yes.
Kind of like Clay. He could be a wee bit more moldable, which a very enticing prospect, if you are Coach Clem, right, to be able to get him in the room and know that he's already got a really good basis of skill set. He's got a year of starting experience on the interior offensive line in the SEC to help get him to where you need him to be for next year. And then obviously a blue chip recruit in Darius Gray. And you got a couple of experienced dudes that you're bringing in from the transfer portal. I mean, we talked about it a lot yesterday in terms of the guys that you're bringing in. You're bringing in our boy Never Nervous Hank Purvis. I hope that one sticks. And then Carter Miller from Central Florida, who presumably your center.
It's only going to stick. It's only going to stick if he doesn't have any offsides penalties.
Yeah, the offside.
Now, if he becomes known for jumping offsides, then he's nervous, Hank Purvis, and that's not good.
No. Yeah, that's not a tag that you want. Right.
So it's all contingent on can he stay in his stance.
And if he can stay in his stance and we can keep the nickname, I think it's a win in the trade already.
For sure.
Because you have a cool nickname.
For sure. Well, yeah, and also the person he got traded for. Notoriously known for coming out of his stance. Even as the center.
I've never seen more false starts at center in my day. Poor Boaz had a bad year. It was a tough one.
Hope it works out for him in Purdue.
I do too.
Maybe it just wasn't a fit here, whatever the case is. Newer start again. Hope it works out.
Yeah, hoping the best for him, for sure. But in terms of Gamecock news too, one of the most exciting things for me recently has been seeing how well Julian Walker's been doing, because we talked about that edge rusher wanting to find like the perfect supporting role for a Dylan Stewart, an edge rusher who could play opposite of him and kind of do maybe what Kyle Kennard did in 24 en route to him winning the Nagurski. Well, Julian Walker apparently has been turning a lot of heads at the Navy All-American Bowl practices. So Rivals, they rank the players from those practices, and their day one top performer, their day one MVP from those practices was South Carolina edge rusher Julian Walker. Julian Walker's also completely has just fired up their boards, right? Like Rivals specifically is higher on Julian Walker than anybody else. They have him as like a top 30 prospect, whereas like ESPN has him outside the top 100. On3 has him a little differently, 24/7. I mean, inside the top 100, but not as high as Rivals. But he is apparently turning heads in those practices enough to where he's starting to garner a lot of positive attention. And who knows, maybe if he is day one SEC ready, maybe the pressure to get that type of edge rusher isn't as paramount as we thought it was. And if that's the case, then you're at a much better position than we thought coming into this offseason.
That's an interesting play. I hadn't really considered that. I do know, I think it was 2 years ago when I saw Dutch Fork play Somerville in the state championship, and I remember I came back, I was like, their defensive end decided the game was over in the fourth quarter.
The game was over when Julian Walker decided it was over.
He ended the game. Also, let us not forget, Julian Walker was committed to
Michigan.
Who?
Well,
it's better. All's well that ends well, but
I think he's in a better position now in terms of stability. Because you know what? Nothing controversial has happened at Michigan in the last month.
Nothing to see here.
No, absolutely nothing. Everything has been totally chill over in Ann Arbor since the turn of the calendar. Since December started, everything's been going perfectly well. Things have been going perfectly well for Miami and Ole Miss. And coming up next, we'll discuss that game, which is being played tonight in Glendale. Winner goes to the national title game. There are storylines galore in this one. We'll tell you what our favorites are and what we expect to see from tonight's game coming up next year in the early game. Brad Brownell, low-key one of the best coaches in basketball all of a sudden. Guy wins with players I've never heard of. They're dominant defensively, skilled in the post and shoot on the perimeter. They did.
Ready? Hope not. Unless I missed it. Was it me? Hope not. Hope not.
Oh, Acton. Quick word with my friends over at the Ecton Law Firm. Look, if tax issues like income tax or business tax issues are kind of plaguing you or your business, well, my friend John Ecton and his team at the Ecton Law Firm, they are here to help. And I'm going to give you a number here real quick where you can use to set up a free consultation. 803-771-9800. Set up that consultation with John and his team at the Ecton Law Firm. Be able to talk through some of those tax issues that have been giving you trouble, and attack them at the source, because there's nothing that you can tell them that they haven't seen before, and everybody's situation is different, but they are very perfectly well versed to be able to attack whatever issue that you have is at the source. With some of these proven local solutions, they have helped thousands of families and businesses just like yours escape that IRS maze. Again, that number is 803-771-9800, and you can always visit them at ectonlawfirm.com. That's ECTON lawfirm.com.
Nazareth Road at Cox Ferry Road, an accident there. No other slowdowns that we know of other than some heavy traffic in certain areas across the Midlands. And forecast-wise, we are looking at a high today of about 70, 74 tomorrow, 78 for Saturday, with a little bit of rain maybe coming in on Saturday night. But right now, it is sitting at 47 on 107.5 The Game.
Tonight on ESPN or ABC, we have the college football playoff semifinal. Ole Miss taking on Miami. That game 7:30 tonight on ESPN.
And do you know what we have to do today? We have to TV shop for that, because
Oh no,
we had a TV, and we realized last night when we looked, we've been kind of nursing it along, and we looked at the date on the back last night. We've had that bugger for 17 years.
Nice.
Oh wow.
So
Nice.
I mean, gotten our money's worth, but it was one of those, well, we could go this weekend. No, but the games are on tonight. And that's your main big one.
Yeah.
So we're prepared for that, or going to be later today.
Early winner for today's show, Jen Jensen's TV, for giving her 17 loyal years.
Salute your
of
service.
No kidding.
Oh, you
Isn't that
can
insane?
rest easy, TV. The job is done. Congratulations.
You ran your race.
Right.
Yeah, that TV was almost in Jen Jensen's home as long as John Harbaugh was the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens.
That's very true. Oh my gosh. Look at that. Much to celebrate.
Wow. Okay.
So anyway,
longevity.
but that's how important the watching the game tonight is.
It is, yeah. Is forced Jen Jensen to hit up the store of her choosing and get a new TV, because I don't think she's going to want to miss this.
No, I think it's gonna be a great game.
It's going to be a fantastic game. Now, I established earlier in the show that I think Miami wins this game, and I feel pretty good about that solely because these things are so won and lost at the line of scrimmage. And I was so impressed with what Miami – I knew their defensive line would give Ohio State some trouble, because Reuben Bain's a legit top 10 talent here in the draft. He's going to fall outside the top 5 or 6 because of his arm length, which I think is dumb. Because you know what? He could have T-Rex arms, and if he still moves guys like that and gets to the quarterback and gets sacks, I don't care, right? But the way their offensive line handled Ohio State's defensive front, to me, was the big factor in that game, because they were able to run the ball at will. They had 2 running backs that almost carried or rushed for 5 yards a carry against Ohio State. They were able to manage possessions and have long possessions. Carson Beck only had to throw for $138 to win that game. Most people would have thought that if Miami was going to beat Ohio State, Carson Beck would have to go put the cape on and be Superman and win that game for him. Didn't have to, because they controlled the line of scrimmage. Ole Miss isn't as good as an offensive line as Ohio State is. They're not as good defensive line as Ohio State is. I expect Miami to be able to control that element of the game, and even though I do expect a lot of flash and some really good plays from Trinidad Chambliss in that Ole Miss offense, because it is that good, because it wasn't like Georgia didn't get pressure on Ole Miss. Trinidad Chambliss just handles that pressure maybe about as well as any quarterback in the entire sport. I expect Miami to win. But do I want to see Ole Miss go in there and win because of the story? 1,000%. I am here for the story, which would make it even better considering I don't believe that they have what it takes in the trenches to win this game.
Yeah, and thinking about the trenches, I mean, Mario Cristobal is an offensive line dude, right? So he built a team in what he wants to see from a football squad, and it's really interesting how that they have, though they got Carson Beck, and he's been an instrumental part of getting them over the hump, he's not the reason why they win.
No.
Right? So
not.
so you argue that he was important. They needed to get him in order to get over the hump, but he's not the reason why they win these games. They win the games in the trenches and kind of with some of the speedy guys that you expect out of traditional Miami teams.
Maybe one of the best players and playmakers in college football that we just haven't gotten to talk about as much because they're not in our area. They're not in the conference, right? We just don't get to talk about Miami as much. Malachi Toney's awesome.
There you go.
And you needed a guy to make a play for you in that Texas A&M game where they're on the road. It's 3-3. He already made one crucial error earlier in that game by fumbling the ball. The mental fortitude for a freshman to come back and take that jet sweep, whatever it was, to the house and be able to score it for the only touchdown of that game, mightily impressive. And he is a dude of a playmaker. And that's an X factor tonight, too, is if I want to see how Miami does in terms of finding ways to get him the ball.
Is the U back?
I think you make the college football playoff semifinal, especially in a 12-team format where you're not judged before the playoff process and getting just thrown into a four-teamer. The fact they had to earn their way in by beating the team that was in line to play in the SEC title game until they lost to Texas, which is the number 3 team in the country for a long stretch of time, Texas A&M. They beat them on the road and held that offense to 3 points in doing so, beating the defending national champion, Ohio State, as, a 9-point underdog, and doing it against an Ohio State team that was number 1 in the country all season long. I think that puts them in back
firmly in back position. Okay. Now, next, Mario Cristobal. Will he be considered a legit coach after winning this game? Because, the thing that always follows Cristobal is like game manager. He flubs the timeout situation, the fumble against Georgia Tech. All that stuff sort of is always around him.
Yeah.
Can he get rid of that if he wins this game?
If he wins, definitely. I think even if he loses, he still can. And that depends on how they lose. Now, if they go into the 2-minute, timeout in the second half and they don't have any timeouts and they have the ball and they're down 6 and they wasted 3 timeouts on something stupid, or if they do what they did against Georgia Tech a couple of years ago where they're in lead preservation mode and instead of taking a knee or something, they run the ball and fumble it and we have a similar thing, then yeah, I think that tag should remain if you do that in a very large game. But if they lose where Ole Miss just beats them, Trinidad Chambliss does what he did against Georgia and throws for 300-plus yards, the pocket's collapsing and he's Houdiniing himself out of these pockets and is making just incredible plays and doing what we know Trinidad Chambliss is very well capable of, then I can't necessarily fault him because sometimes you just play football and you get beat. If that ends up being the case, then they can lose tonight too, and I'll say that he has made some substantial growth as like a game managing coach. But that cloud's still not looming as large, but it's still there, off in the distance. But you can still see it.
At what point in tonight's game will Michael Irvin be on all fours barking?
Kickoff. The opening kickoff. They might have to have a get-back coach for him. There's probably some GA from Miami that's in a meeting right now at a hotel in Glendale, Arizona, where the brass at Miami is saying, hey, look, I know you have these duties during the game, but we have a really important job for you tonight. Oh, what is it? What am I charting? Or am I helping with substitution patterns? I'll do whatever. We need you to make sure Michael Irvin doesn't get on the field. What? Yeah, he gets on all fours on the sideline. He's awfully close to being in bounds. Can you just make sure he doesn't get on the field of play? I guess, yeah.
Good luck.
I can do that.
Because the playmaker still looks like he can go.
Oh, you're not staying in front of him. That's for sure. If he runs at you and decides he wants to get on the field, I don't think you're going to be able to shift your way in front of him.
You know what I saw somebody mention? I think this is really cool, though. They was talking about this idea that it's really cool to see Michael Irvin, somebody who's an alum of the university, still be so invested.
Yeah.
And what we wonder is are we going to be losing that type of investment with the transfer portal and players not having the type of diehard loyalty they have to a university? Will that thing be sort of disappearing in the future, whereas Michael Irvin is all about the U above anything else? Cowboys, Hall of Fame, that's all fine, but his pride and joy is the U. And I think that I think that is really cool to see.
It is really cool. And I don't think we're going to lose that, because how many people that have gone to multiple schools, like even just as a student, there's one school that they're always going to associate with as that they love, right? That they still genuinely love. I was that way. My first school, I couldn't care less about. If they decided to be unaccredited and full tomorrow, I wouldn't shed a tear, right? Did not have the greatest memories there. But if that happened to Middle Tennessee State University, I'd be heartbroken.
Right.
But and that's the thing too. There's always going to have that. Some people in college football are always going to have that type of affiliation to one program, even if they did play for a couple. So I don't think we'll lose that. Maybe they're just not on all fours and barking on the sidelines.
Well, he is the playmaker.
He is the playmaker, yeah.
so I mean, this is a different dude.
If anybody keeps it on brand, it is Michael Irvin. But when we come back, our man Jordan Kay from the State newspaper going to try to join us today to talk transfer portal and Gamecock offseason next.
I-20 westbound before Alpine Road, the right lane is blocked. So as you approach Alpine Road on I-20 westbound, going to want to stay left. Nazareth Road at Cox Ferry Road, we also have a report of a slowdown there due to an earlier accident. 70 is going to be our high today, 74 tomorrow, 78 for Saturday. And the afternoon or evening rain showers will be coming in sometime, again, in the afternoon or evening of Saturday. And then that'll kind of usher in a little bit cooler weather, 57 for the high on Sunday. But right now, 47 on 107.5 The Game.
From the state newspaper, our pal Jordan Kay joining us to talk about all the recent developments with South Carolina's offseason and what we can expect from here. Jordan, good morning. Appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us a little bit.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And the first thing I want to discuss is the additions that we've gotten so far this week, right? Offensive lineman Hank Purvis from Purdue, who we have already named Never Nervous Hank Purvis, and that's contingent on whether or not he's jumping off sides next year. Carter Miller, center from Central Florida, and Jordan Thomas, defensive lineman from Georgia. You look at those players right there. What are you expecting in terms of impact for this upcoming team?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is with the two offensive linemen, they've played, and I think that's a big step in the right direction, is getting guys who've actually taken snaps, especially like the undertaking South Carolina's doing right now is trying to portal an offensive line when almost there's plenty of other teams around the country trying to do the same thing. And I think over the last couple of years we've seen that schools that really try and portal an entire offensive line, it doesn't work out a ton. And so you almost kind of have to be really, really smart about the guys you bring in. And there are teams who have done it. Vanderbilt last year basically portaled the entire offensive line. So it has been done, but you want to get guys who have had production, not just rely on potential. And the thing I like is South Carolina brought in two offensive linemen who have played football. Carter Miller, that center that we talked about from UCF, started basically, I think, every game at center for the Golden Knights, and Purvis played a ton for Purdue last year. Thomas, he's coming from Georgia, so he's got the name brand, but kind of one of those dudes where they're trying to get a lot of on the upside. He really hasn't played in 2 years, but former four-star prospect, so if they got a good deal for him, it's probably worth it.
Unintentionally, you led me to where I wanted to go next, because you mentioned this on your Twitter account too, and it caused us to create an entire segment for it yesterday with that kind of portal philosophical debate of portal recruiting from production, even if it's at lower levels, versus potential. And we all know the stakes here of what 2026 means for this program coming off of a 4-8 season. But how do you think this program is attacking that type of philosophical debate in terms of getting players who were productive at previous stops versus trying to find those guys with the potential they think they can get something out of?
Yeah, I mean, for now it seems like they've been doing good, but I think this is also something where it really sucks that we don't know how much any of these kids are making. You think about like NBA free agency, and let's say the Charlotte Hornets go and sign, I don't know, give me a random 12th man or something.
Solomon Hill.
Perfect. They go sign Solomon Hill. Their fans are not saying oh my gosh, we signed Solomon Hill. Could that guy start for us? Because Shams or whoever is saying, hey, the Charlotte Hornets signed Solomon Hill to a 1 year, minimum contract. And so their fans are saying, okay, hey, they're taking kind of a swing. Solomon Hill, they're not putting much into him. If he works out, awesome. And so with some of these guys who have the potential, I don't know if they're doing that, that's the greatest thing ever. It's like, hey, they're thinking, hey, our coaching staff is going to be able to get this guy going in the right direction. We really liked him out of high school. Perhaps the development wasn't there, but we think we can turn him around. Awesome, go for it. But if you're putting a lot of resources in guys like that, that's a tough that might be a tough recipe, because I think we've seen so far over the last couple of years in the portal that the guys, even at the lower level, if they have played and had production, that's usually a higher clip rate that you're hitting when you bring them up versus, hey, this guy was a 4-star but hasn't played in 2 or 3 years. And granted, there are you do have to know the situation. I think Gabriel Brownlow-Dinty, who was at Texas A&M, didn't really play for 3 years and then comes to South Carolina last year, and I thought was a really good interior defensive lineman for South Carolina and a fantastic run stopper. Well, there was more to the story of why a former 5-star didn't play that much. He was injured. Texas A&M had a lot of guys, and he really just couldn't climb the depth chart after the first year and had some lingering injury stuff. And so that makes sense. And so sometimes you need to know the full story behind everything.
And for reference, too, Solomon Hill in 2016 signed a 4-year, $48 million contract with the New Orleans Pelicans.
Wow. Good for you, Solomon Hill.
Good for Solomon.
I mean, we're not in the winner segment right now, but I think Solomon Hill's a winner. I had to double check and make sure I remembered that correctly. And yes, Solomon Hill, as a bench warmer, did make $12 million a year.
That's why I saw your eyes pop out of your head just now.
Yeah, I was like, I pulled it up on Spot Track here, and I was like, oh, buddy, okay, that's worse than I remembered. But when it comes to this team, too, in terms of the potential part, there was another player that they picked up that I think you could definitely put in the potential category, because for some reason or another, mostly injury related, wasn't able to be as productive in his last spot, and that's Jaden Gibson at wide receiver. The measurables are great. I think the talent is there, but when you heard that South Carolina was bringing in and then ultimately getting and acquiring Jaden Gibson's services to play wide receiver for the Gamecocks, what were some of your initial thoughts on him?
Basically, I think we're kind of the Solomon Hill thing of hey, hopefully they didn't put a ton into this, hopefully they didn't give this guy a ton of money, because I think it is a very big risk. You look at the measurables like you're talking about. This is a guy who, coming out of high school, was coveted by basically every school in the country. South Carolina, with their wide receivers coach then, Justin Stepp, made a big run at him, commits to Florida, decommits, ends up going to Oklahoma, and has a pretty solid redshirt freshman year, seems to be on a good trajectory, then blows out his knee the next year. Then I think, either has another knee injury or just had a setback. I mean, a setback could mean he re-aggravated it. Basically had 2 knee injuries in 2 years, hasn't played in by the time he takes a snap, is going to have not played in 2.5 years. You really just don't know what you're getting. And I think it's a pretty big risk. But again, if you didn't have to commit a lot of resources to him, you're hoping to just increase the depth, and at best, maybe he's completely healed and can contribute for you. Why not? Heck yeah, bring him in and really see if you can increase the talent in that room. And if you didn't commit a lot of resources and it doesn't work out and the injuries kind of just haven't turned him into a different player, no harm, no foul. So I kind of do like that pickup in that sense of, could have a high ceiling, and if you didn't commit the resources, no big deal if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, that's another thing I guess I just haven't taken into account as much as the financial investment in some of these players, right? When you equate it to pro sports, there's a serious risk-reward thing there. Jordan Kay from the State Newspaper has joined us. Jordan, appreciate your time as always. Good, sir. Looking forward to seeing you here soon.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you, Jordan.
Good stuff there from Jordan. Coming up next, Jordan's a winner. We'll see who else we give our winners of today's show. Brought to you by Golden Spur next here in the early game.
years. That's almost as long as the 18 years that John Harbaugh was with the Ravens. But 15 years is the parts and labor guarantee that AAA Heating and Air will give you when you sign up with them. That's long-term peace of mind for your building, your staff, and the people that you serve. So if you're a small business owner, part of a church, or maybe in an organization that relies on needs a dependable HVAC system, you need to call the folks at AAA Heating and Air. AAA Heating and Air specializes in helping churches, small businesses, and light commercial spaces stay comfortable year-round with local experts that you can trust. And getting started is easy. Just call AAA Heating and Air for a quote, or you can call or visit callAAAtoday.com. What they'll help you with, they will give you no payments and no interest for 12 full months. That gives you time to plan, budget, and breathe easy while your new system is already working for you. And also, oh yeah, that 15-year parts and labor guarantee. That's a long time. So call them folks at AAA Heating and Air and tell them that Preston from 107.5 The Game sent you.
Winners.
As we do every day to end the game, we give you our winners for today's show. Brought to you by the Golden Spur. And, well, I don't know if I can think of a more golden winner than NBA journeyman Solomon Hill, who got a reference. He has worked himself, into the show. I never thought we'd have a Solomon Hill reference on a local sports talk radio show in Columbia, South Carolina. But when it came to finding an example of maybe not the best value when it comes to an offseason acquisition, Solomon Hill in 2016 as a role player and bench player did sign a deal for 4 years, $48 million with the New Orleans Pelicans. He made $12 million a year to come off the bench.
Definitely could not pick him out of a lineup. I actually never even heard his name. Don't know that man. Sorry to that man. Don't know him.
Sorry to that man, but congratulations to that man.
Well, congratulations to him. I was going to give with that being said, I was going to give my winner to the NBA CBA agreement that allows for these things to happen.
Yes.
But I'm not. I'm going to give my winner to Michael Irvin because I am looking forward to seeing the playmaker on the sidelines today. One of the most interesting, electrifying players in the NFL. His second career as a media personality was awesome. This third career as essentially a live mascot has been really cool. So Michael Irvin, the playmaker, the heart and soul of not only the U but of the Cowboys, just an overall fascinating player of football because there's obviously the things off the field that Michael Irvin dealt with, but one of the rare archetypes never affected him on the field.
No.
Whatever he did off the field, he did that then, and he clocked in and went and practiced hard, played hard, gave everything for his team. He was the captain of every team that he plays on. So shout out to the playmaker.
Did you ever read the Jeff Pearlman book, Boys Will Be Boys?
I have.
And you know about the opening chapter about how that starts with Michael Irvin. The fact that was never as widely reported, I've never read a book like that in my life where I read the first chapter and I'm immediately like, oh, I'm going to read all of this maybe in like 3 days.
For sure.
Yeah, if you haven't, just look up Google Michael Irvin scissors.
I was going to give another winner to Jeff Pearlman. Great author, writes fantastic sports books. But that book, particularly The Boys Will Be Boys, fantastic. And that's where I got a lot of the information about Michael Irvin because, again, he participated in long nights, early mornings, off the field, but he never missed practice. He was always the main one at getting guys going. And people think of like Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith being the heart of that team, and it wasn't. It was the playmaker.
Michael Irvin, every bit as much, and I would say more active off the field than those guys. If anybody had an excuse to come into work tired, it was Michael Irvin. And guess who never came to work tired? Now, I wouldn't suggest anybody doing that.
Do not do that.
You want to know why? Because you're not Michael Irvin.
Right. There's only one of him.
Yeah, truly one of one. Also, winner, the 1988-89 Michigan Wolverines men's basketball team, because I know those guys, because we'll be watching that game tonight between Ole Miss and Miami in the college football playoff semifinals, and they're going to be cheering for Ole Miss. You know how I know that? They told Seth Emerson from The Athletic that, because they experienced the exact same thing when their head coach Bill Frieder took the Arizona State job right before the NCAA tournament. Bo Schembechler said, I want a Michigan man coaching Michigan. Wouldn't let him coach the team in the NCAA tournament. What did that team do? Well, rallied around, at the time, interim head coach Steve Fisher.
Yep.
And they won a national championship. As many great teams as Michigan basketball has had, that's the only one that was cutting down the nets at the end of the big dance. And they did so after losing their coach after the last game of the regular season, just like this Ole Miss team.
That sends me on a path. I'm going to give a winner to Glenn Rice.
Yes.
And, well, extension of that, I'll give a winner to the Charlotte Hornets. Glenn Rice, one of the famous Charlotte Hornets. And he also won number 41, and I would have to ask him why, because that is not a cool basketball number.
No.
And it had to be a personal reason why he won 41. But he was always really cool, one of the good three-point shooters, and a really fun, like a mid-level basketball player. Like, he wasn't a superstar ever, but he was just like a solid basketball player.
He was a superstar for about that 3-week stretch whenever they played in that NCAA tournament. Glenn Rice was their Trinidad Chambliss.
There you go.
And that's where a lot of those parallels, because another winner that I have brought to you by the Golden Spur, parallels. Because you know what that Michigan team had to do to get to the Final Four that year? They had to beat Illinois. They were 0-2 in the regular season against Illinois. Illinois beat them in Champaign and then worked them in the last game of the regular season in Ann Arbor. Well, they had to go through Illinois to get to the Final Four, and they beat Illinois in a very close, tight, exciting game. Ole Miss only had one loss in the regular season this year, to Georgia. Guess who they had to beat to get to the Final Four of this college football playoff? Georgia. And they won in a tight, close, exciting game.
Building on that, winner, you, me, football fans, what a weekend we have coming up. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. A lot of great things happening.
And it's all playoff football, too.
All big-time football.
It's do or die, win or go home football. Nothing but that for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. For 5 straight days, we get win or go home playoff. So we are all winners for getting to enjoy that. Tyler Head, Jack Veltri. Tyler Head questionable as we got on the injury report. Either way, the extra point is coming up next.